You have many years experience in IP in the United States. How is the current COVID-19 situation affecting the legal sector in general, and which are the major changes you've seen in the last few months?
At the beginning of this whole process, in early March, I think it was, we started to see a small changes in the courts. In other words, we got a couple of notices from a couple of courts about not letting people in if they had a fever, or, those were kind of the early days. And we saw that and we thought, this is going to grow exponentially. This is going to grow at an exponential rate. And so we immediately set up a website on our firm website. It's www.paulhastings.com/US court closings. I think I got that right. And we started updating that daily to show what was happening in the courts. And as predicted, you could see that website start to change exponentially. One day it was 2 courts, then it was 4, then it was all the courts, then the restrictions were closings, and and it happened very fast. And now virtually all the courts have restrictions in terms of no in-person hearings, and then of course the courts have to focus on their criminal cases under the Constitution, and then the Speedy Trial Act. They have to give very strict attention to the criminal docket. So all of this has had a fallout in terms of the litigation, in terms of the schedules.
Bruce, as the global co-chair of IP at Paul Hastings, you oversee the firm's 100-plus lawyer IP practice. What challenges and opportunities does the current situation present in this line of work in particular?
Beginning of March, it happened before then, but beginning of March is when, people were started to see office closings and just sort of feelings that was going to happen. I remembered that back in January, we had put on a conference around the JP Morgan Health Tech Conference, and it was about health tech. And we were talking about the convergence of life sciences and technology and how that change was happening on an exponential rate. And the challenge was to think exponentially, because humans evolved to think linearly. We think one step at a time. But when confronted with exponential change, it is very hard to wrap your head around that, because we're just not evolutionarily wired to think that way. And at the beginning of March, I told our team, I said, remember that health tech conference when we talked about technology and life sciences converging, thinking exponentially? I said, we have to think exponentially now, because we are confronted with real exponential change, which is a virus spreading exponentially. The world is going to change at an exponential rate. Everything that's happening today is going to be twice the difference, 4 times the difference, and it's not going to be a stepwise. So the court closings, by the time the week ended when we set up that website, it was filled already with change. And so we started to think at that moment, I challenged everybody to think, how can we think exponentially about the future and what it's going to look like, and how can we be prepared? And that's what we challenge ourselves to do. And I actually think as a society, that's our challenge. And that's why it's so difficult and so anxiety generating and so fear generating, is because it is so hard to think that way.
So Bruce, you have vast experience in IP litigation. Do you see the COVID-19 situation having a financial impact on IP stakeholders in the United States?
Intellectual property, I've seen historically, whether it's the 2008 financial crisis, whether it was going back even to the 90s and some of the ups and downs. And what I've observed is the economy sort of cycles. The IP tends to cycle, but the amplitude is kind of reduced. So the economy kind of goes like this, and then IP, I feel, kind of goes like that. And so, maybe that's an artifact of if the economy is constricting, people are very concerned about competition if they have exclusivity. On the other hand, if they really need to compete and they're faced with someone attacking them, they have to defend themselves.
You also work as an adjunct professor of law at the New York University School of Law. As a seasoned IP expert working closely with the experts of the near future, do you see COVID-19 leading young professionals in the field to develop or specialize in a particular set of skills, and any examples you can share with us?
Yeah, I teach an advanced patent law course at NYU, life sciences patent law, and the students are very engaged. And the COVID-19 has really brought into the forefront how important innovation is, and how dependent we are on innovation by the biotech and pharma industries. And things like patent eligibility for diagnostic testing has now come up as a big thing, because we see how important diagnostic testing is. And if you can't get patents, what does that mean for innovation? And the students are very engaged on that. They're concerned, of course, about the future with the practical side of it with law firms and summer programs and future jobs as lawyers. But I think they're also highly motivated by the prominence of the life sciences in this crisis. And I think they're eager to be part of it and help in any way they can.
You've been protecting the innovators against the generic companies in some of the largest cases in life sciences. Do you see innovation companies during this time? Can you give any thoughts about compulsory licensing with regards to potentially saving lives in other countries?
So there's been discussion about around the COVID and what is the relationship between IP and COVID. And, you know, it's just been sort of discussions. There hasn't, in the US, there really, to my knowledge, hasn't been any real kind of sort of regulatory or legal push to actually do it. I think right now it feels like it's more of a policy that, in other words, the primary goal is to get a cure out there, get vaccines out there, get, you know, assays out there, and people are sort of voluntarily working to that goal. So that said, but I think there is a mindset that, of course, there's still, you know, a need to innovate and there's still a need to invest. And I think right now, I feel like the private sector is really working to try to balance where that's going to come out, recognizing that, you know, there's going to need to be some return on investment for the investment. But on the other hand, where do you balance that in an economy that's struggling in a crisis situation?